everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. Today we're going to do a little mental health check-in. This time of year, fall, winter, can be kind of tough for anybody who's suffering from any anxiety challenges. Anxiety actually is a really healthy emotion, but what happens when it starts to manage you rather than you managing it? Today we've got two really special guests from Anxiety Canada. Welcome please to Judith Law. Hello Judith, you're the Executive Director of Anxiety Canada for the last 6 years or so, Judith. Welcome to the set. And John Bateman, a Canadian champion for Anxiety Canada. We're really happy to have you here too, John.
Glad to be here.
Very nice, thank you. Judith, let's talk a little bit about when does anxiety become a problem?
Great question. One of the things that we look for is frequency. Mm-hmm. So if you are experiencing anxiety frequently and it's disruptive, then it's likely, and how you'd compare that to someone else of, let's say if it's my teenage daughter. Mm-hmm. So I would, if her worries are really frequent as compared to other kids her age, and she is sharing that with me, or I'm noticing that there's a real pattern, and it's really interfering with her everyday activities or thoughts, then it's something that we're going to want to check on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And anxiety, John, in your experience too, I mean, this touches a wide spectrum of people, and anxiety disorders can become, they're a really, really broad spectrum of disorders. But you've had your own challenges with anxiety, haven't you, John? Tell us a little bit about how that's affected your life.
Oh, well, they started early. Probably, if my first recollection of what would be defined as anxiety was when I was around 5 or 6 years old. Mind you, I didn't have a name for it then. Then it would have been, like stomach aches or temper tantrums or whatever. I had my first, panic attack probably when I was 10 or 11, 12, had no idea what was going on. Raced home, and it was a very foreign feeling. That feeling kind of came and went, and then I went back to my regular life for a while. And then sort of in my early 20s, I had another panic attack. And, it's a unique feeling for everybody that has one. But it was just this draining feeling and this fear and kind of out of nowhere. And I think that's what's disorienting for a lot of people, is that there seems to be no rhyme or reason that they happen when they happen. Mm-hmm. And then so from there, I kind of developed more, or I was more aware of my anxiety condition. And it led to bouts of it did lead to bouts of depression a few times in my life. Anxiety and depression are they're cousins. Yes, they certainly are.
Close cousins.
But through that, I've learned to cope with the condition. And through CBT and definitely working with Anxiety Canada and all the services they offer has definitely been a great help for me.
Wonderful. Mm-hmm. And I must commend you, John. I mean, you're obviously a man. And I think it's often harder for men to talk about mental health issues than it is for women. Mm-hmm. And so I want to thank you for being a champion and helping to, bring men awareness to this issue for the males of the species. Mm-hmm. Judith, John mentioned CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Tell us a little bit about that.
CBT is an effective treatment for anxiety and depression. There's been lots of studies. I mean, lots of randomized clinical trials on CBT, and it's a form of psychological therapy. And it is about challenging those thoughts and balancing thoughts, and it's it's structured therapy, and has been, as I said, really effective for people with anxiety disorders. Mm-hmm.
What would be an example of CBT if I had a panic attack, for example, coming on the set? What were a couple of things that someone would do to sort of alleviate those symptoms?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things that we always say is that you want to be an expert about anxiety. And so the more you're able to identify and understand what it is that your feeling, so what your body's feeling, what's happening in your mind, and then how that's affecting your behavior, then the more likely you're able to manage it. And part of CBT is, as I said earlier, it's balancing those worries, those thoughts, and then recognizing the symptoms, and John described those really well, because he may have had those symptoms as a child, but we certainly have them as adults as well, you know, heart racing, tension, sometimes problems breathing. And part of CBT is also learning those coping strategies. And then the biggest part of CBT, where you get really, it's really the, what I call the nugget of it, is what we call exposure therapy. So that's when you actually take action, and John can probably give some examples of that. But it's really it's graduated, and with a therapist or a really good counselor that knows CBT, then you will slowly expose yourself to or challenge yourself to change your behavior. So I can give you an example, sort of an extreme example, if you like.
I just wanted to recap what you said there. That was really important about anxiety being a three-part issue in terms of the physical reactions from your body, your thoughts, which sometimes just won't stop swirling,
Right.
and then the behavior that you should, or habits that you can learn, or techniques to bring you back to a more balanced place. So I like the three parts about it. It's not it's not a simple issue, and it's very, very different for adults, teens, and children, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And John, tell us a little bit about what she was mentioning about the exposure.
Oh yeah, so I mean, I've had many times when I've utilized exposure therapy. A good one that a lot of people can relate to would be sort of fear of flying. If you have anxiety about flying. What I find is the exposure therapy within that would be going on the flight and realizing that you're going to be okay and you're going to survive and get through it, and then sort of celebrating the fact that you did that. But previous to that, you have to sort of do what I call catching negative thoughts about that situation. So if you're having negative thoughts about it crashing or whatever, you have to catch those, and then quickly, when you can, interject sort of rational thoughts. You know, like, oh, well, yeah, but there's a million flights a day, and statistically speaking, this just isn't going to happen. So if you kind of keep catching those thoughts where you can start turning them around. It's a little bit of work, but it's really worth doing. And then once you get on the plane, you do that, and then you feel that sort of sense of reward and relief that you actually did it. And once you start building those accomplishments on one another, then that's where CBT can really start to work.
Interesting. And then your reactions to those situations become less and less, because you know how to manage that rather than it taking over
within the process. And then all of those apply to everything that you do, or every time you might have anxiety. You maybe used it initially for fear of flying, but then they're interchangeable, and they can apply to many different circumstances. So it's about establishing those habits and kind of rewiring your negative brain, or your brain that will kind of default towards fear.
So Judith, some of the ways that we can help to rewire the brain, I mean, CBT is a great one, but also lifestyle changes perhaps. If you're not sleeping well, there's issues that you can address that way. Because I think anxiety can become very, well, it is multifaceted, but it can lead to eating disorders, to, as John said, panic attacks, separation anxiety, all of those types of things. So what are some of the other tools and techniques that Anxiety Canada would recommend for some of the anxiety disorders?
Well, thanks, Liz. I think I'm going to separate out two things. So there's, regular anxiety, and then there are anxiety disorders. So we have a lot of resources that help people who have mild to moderate anxiety. So these are people, I would say I'm one of those people. So our MindShift CBT app, for one, is it is a tool that is entirely based on CBT, and people from all over the world use it, and it's a free app that you can use on a daily basis, and whereby you learn about anxiety, you learn about the different anxiety types, you check in, you rate your level of anxiety, you then can start to do some of that homework, so that cognitive piece, the balancing those worries, and then really even taking action in terms of learning the what we call somatic skills. So these are audio files that are in the app. So you learn calm breathing, you learn visualization, and all that stuff takes a lot of practice. And then you also can take action by doing the exposure work, which is building a fear ladder. Now, all of this you would also use if you were with a therapist who knows CBT. So that can apply for someone who has an anxiety disorder. It's with the app, what's great is that it's self-paced. You can also share that out with your healthcare provider, whether that's a psychologist or your doctor or your school counselor. I find that I use the app, and many of our staff use the app just as check-in. Because you're going to go through stressful periods in your life, or even coming here, looking at my app while I was sitting at Starbucks and doing a little bit of that calm breathing, was really helpful.
Is meditation also one of the tools that you would recommend, John? Is this something that you've tried in your journey?
For sure. I've tried meditation, and meditation works for a lot of people. In my situation, meditation doesn't really work for me, but what does work for me, and where people get confused, is this difference between meditation and mindfulness.
Yes.
Meditation is not mindfulness, and vice versa. Meditation is sitting down, deliberately doing breathing, and I do that to the extent that Judith just referred to, where I'm in a situation and deep breaths in and out, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. So I do that for those things. But then it's important, kind of as you're going along, the beauty of mindfulness is that you're kind of paying attention to what's happening right then and there. So it can be as simple as me taking a drink and paying attention to the feel of the cup, the temperature of the water, what it feels like. And then even sometimes when you check out and just do that, it can start to steer you away from those anxious feelings. It's kind of like grounding yourself, feeling your feet on the ground, feeling the texture of your clothing. It's right there and it's ready for you, and you can do it. You can spend, if you want, 10 seconds doing mindfulness, or you can spend an hour doing mindfulness. So it's very, very helpful in that way.
Interesting. And Judith, tell us a bit some of the ways that anxiety affects teenagers. I'm just wondering if the whole social media thing that are very much steeped in now, which wasn't an issue when we were growing up, but what kind of role is social media playing in anxiety levels?
This is a hot button issue. I think that what we're hearing from parents and from teenagers is what you're seeing in the media all the time, which is a lot of distraction and social media either contributing to loneliness or helping kids connect.
Right.
So it's a tough one. I think that what we know is that there are healthy habits, and it's certainly something we encourage when we're talking about our mental well-being, especially anxiety. So getting out into nature, going for a walk is a really simple thing. Sleeping well, which you referred to earlier. And so if you are, say, on your cell phone and a lot of teens are, they delay going to bed. And we know that there's a biological change that happens around, I think, 11 and 12 years old. And so your rhythm is a bit different. But it's just like everything else. It's really about moderation and self-regulation. And I think that's where social media makes it so difficult, because it's quite often the games that they play are so enticing, and they are somewhat addictive. So it's hard to cast a wide net to say that this is, that if we prescribe X, then that'll work for everyone.
Right.
But really, we talk about getting sleep, and teenagers need between, 8 to 10 hours of sleep. It's getting regular exercise. It's eating well. Now, none of this is going to cure you or be treatment if you have an anxiety disorder, but all these are factors in helping you manage your well-being, of which, and managing your anxiety.
Right. And John, humor is also a factor in managing your anxiety and well-being.
For sure.
And you're actually a comedian.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I've written a humor column in a magazine for the last 10 years.
Wonderful. And you've also written a very interesting book called Salt Spring Has Issues.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my column's called Bateman Has Issues, and it was basically I live on Salt Spring Island, which is an enigmatic, odd place.
And we'll also let viewers know, in case they're wondering about your surname, yes, you are the son of Robert Bateman.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
No anxiety being his son, I'm sure.
No,
Living
never,
up to that name.
Never, no.
But you are an artist in your own right as well, so So, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it's a compilation of all my stories about Salt Spring Island, and it's humorous and sarcastic and all those things. And humor does, going back to anxiety, it does play a big part for me in helping. Humor doesn't help when you're in a critical state.
Good
you
point.
can't just turn on YouTube and laugh your way out of being in a critical state.
Yeah.
But I find it certainly helps if you're in a state where you're maintaining. It definitely does help. It's important to defer to those things, among many other things, while you're in a more controlled state. Yeah.
Right.
It's one of the keys.
Yeah.
And certainly in my life, it's a big part of it.
Very good. Got to lighten up, right?
Yeah,
Lighten your
right.
path.
Yeah.
And Judith, is there any particular time of the year when anxiety levels go up in our society in general?
Well, we know that we receive a lot more queries from educators, from parents, from the general public in the fall and winter. And I think it really is because, well, my guess is because of seasons. And start of the school year is always an anxiety-provoking time.
Yes.
And then, of course, we've got Christmas, which is, for a lot of people, a joyous time, but can also be an extremely challenging time. And for people who are in school, whether it's primary school or post-secondary, you've got your exam schedules, right? So it really ramps up in October, November, and often parents also they will be called in if their child is having problems in school in around October, and so that's often when they're going to reach out for external help.
Right.
Yeah.
Parents themselves. Yeah. And Anxiety Canada recently hosted a very unique event, and I believe, John, you were sort of very instrumental in this, called Our Anxiety Stories,
Right.
From Coast to Coast to Coast. Talk to us a little bit about that. Whose stories were you receiving, and how did this work?
Well, the event started because I wanted an opportunity to. I've been a champion with Anxiety Canada for a couple of years, but very busy with being the chair of my father's foundation, the Bateman Foundation. And when I stopped being chair after my 4 years, I knew I wanted to spend more time with Anxiety Canada. What I wanted to do is figure out a way that we could, raise funds and raise awareness. Those are the two really important things, because this is a really important, what Judith does is very important, Anxiety Canada is. And I went through all the possibilities of how to do that, whether it's like a walkathon or whatever it might be. And then so initially I thought about, well, what do I like to do? And so my initial thought was I like to talk. So I thought, okay, a talkathon. And that's when these guys, I kind of thought, this is the idea, what do you think? And then they took it over and really molded it from there. And that's when it became Our Anxiety Stories. And so we kind of melded these two together. So the initial sort of release that we did was on World Mental Health Day. And it was 8 hours straight of me interviewing people about their anxiety stories. Wow. And these aren't just people who have anxiety, they're people who deal with people who have anxiety at every level, from every walk of life.
Wow.
So that's where it happened, and we are going to continue with our anxiety stories as a podcast, so people can expect to find that through any of your podcast apps.
And might I just add, how brave of these people to talk openly and publicly about their anxiety
Definitely.
issues.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot of courage.
Mm-hmm.
And it just helps to break down the stigma
Mm-hmm.
of this, because it's our mental health, which is no different from any other part of our body, right?
Thanks for
Yeah.
saying that, Liz.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it is non-discriminatory, rich, poor, you know, from every race, every culture, every age, every gender. You know, people are suffering from this and need tools. So thank you for helping those people bring their voices to the table. I think it's going to help others as well.
That's what I want to do. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Judith, I think Anxiety Canada is going to be airing those stories
Yes, we are.
on your website, which is a really good website, easy to navigate, lots of really good tools and resources on there.
Thank you. Well, we hope we also have a newsletter. It's called Shift, and we're really active on social media because we find that over 70% of people like to engage via their mobile devices. And so we really, you know, we've got educational videos, and now we've got even more original content. And sharing stories is probably the most impactful because you always think you're alone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really normalizes what we're experiencing.
Yeah. Tremendous. And are there any other events coming up that Anxiety Canada is hosting, or that you'd like to tell us about?
Well, thanks a lot. Actually, this is the start of our fall campaign. As a charity, we rely a great deal on donations, and so we are going to be, as we mentioned, sharing these podcasts. And in the run-up to Christmas, we'll be asking people to become more involved with our organization by raising awareness, so sharing the stories. If they feel generous by contributing to us via our website, they can donate to Anxiety Canada and receive a tax receipt. We're also at a number of conferences and events in community, and we're always looking for volunteers who would like to learn more about anxiety and be available in person at these events. And that's, as I said earlier, it is a busy time. So yeah, I think at this point we have between 30 to 40 volunteers, and they serve in various capacities, but the more the merrier. So
Good.
yeah.
Yeah. And the more diverse the merrier too.
Absolutely.
yeah.
We have a youth committee that we've expanded now nationally, and so we'd love to hear from people from rural BC, from Northern Canada, from across Canada. Yeah, we're really wanting to be inclusive and to diversify.
And one of the things on your website too was your Find Help feature, and you've got a map of Canada with, you know, points all over the map where people can go for help, for counseling, for assistance, for aid in dealing with their anxiety disorders. And I thought that was so, when I first clicked on it, I thought, whoa, like this issue is everywhere and it's every one of us. And it's just really wonderful to have those resources at your fingertips, which in John's case, when you were a child, that just simply wasn't there. So your mother, you know, went to great lengths to get you the help that you needed.
Yeah.
And look at you today.
Yeah.
You know, you're a champion of this issue, and it's really important.
Thanks for mentioning, Liz. Actually, I left that out. We purposely created a directory, a national directory for people who, the thousands of people who call us or email us to ask for services and programs. And quite often they're asking for free services and programs or sliding scale. So we have intentionally enlisted the help of volunteers, and also one member of our staff dedicates time every week to calling, to reviewing websites, to trying to ensure that what's listed is includes CBT services. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. And on your website as well, there's information for educators, for teachers who are dealing with students who are presenting with anxiety issues, for parents, for teens, for children. So it's, as I said before, very, very inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to also mention that we have we have 2 online courses that are free as well. And at this point, we're seeing just over 10,000 people have registered. It's called MAPS, which stands for My Anxiety Plan. And they can access that via our website. And it's self-directed. And a number of educators are enrolled in the MAPS. So there's MindShift, which is the app, and then there's MAPS. And then if you're looking for external services, you can go to our Finding Help.
Wonderful. How comprehensive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. And John, just what would you say to our viewers, just to leave them with a message of hope if they are tackling any anxiety issues themselves?
Well, the first point of hope is that there's services like Anxiety Canada out there. That's the first point of, what I can, the beauty of what we did with our anxiety stories and with the numbers that Judith was throwing out with, 10,000 people, is that the first thing is that you're definitely not alone. There's power in community.
Yes.
I have the most successful the most successful I've ever had is with group therapy is wonderful. And that's essentially what this is. What Anxiety Stories is it's kind of like group therapy. But also, there's hope because although you can have really dark times, there's always something better on the horizon. It's really important to know that. And it's important to really take stock when you feel good as well. Just so you remember that that's there.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's what you need to get you through.
Wonderful. Yeah. And so thank you both for the work that you're doing here with Anxiety Canada. It's really important work. The issue seems to be becoming more and more pervasive, but along with that, we're getting more and more tools, we're getting more and more experts, and we're getting just a lot more help to help us all become a little more connected and mindful and leading a little more productive and happy life. Yeah. So thank you to you both. And we look forward to having you back to have an update from some new programs that are coming too.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us here on Coast Connections. We hope that this episode helps you feel a little more connected if you're suffering from anxiety in any of its presentations, or if a family member is as well. There's lots of resources and help out there for you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next time.